Rob, appreciate you joining me today. A lot to dive into. We're going to talk about Chip Chilla, but I want to talk about culture first because you had a post recently on X, formerly known as Twitter, where you talked about forgiveness and you talked about faith. And I have to tell you, I actually wrote a column about this because I thought it was incredibly moving what you wrote. What sparked that in you to share that message?
Well, a foundation in God. I think Jesus only lets you stray so much, and I think at a certain point, he grabbed me again and hugged me, and I think it's important to the feeling that I had and that foundation for whatever silly movies I've made, and for whatever reason people seem to think anything I say is interesting or funny. I guess people call it a platform. I don't know what you call it. I wanted them to if you are thinking about looking for something in life, a foundation that doesn't isn't in sand where it could be blown away. And if you have a family, then if you have that foundation in something beautiful and something like Christianity. I mean, there are other religions out there that say, well, kill your enemy, hate your enemy, and there are infidels. And we have a religion that says love your enemy, love thy neighbor as thyself. I think that's love
Yeah.
others. That what a beautiful way to go through life.
Well, and your message captured that. I mean, your message really captured when you went through each person and the types of people who maybe you were rallying against before during COVID, but you had this sort of reflective tone. It was really powerful seeing you juxtapose those things.
Well, there were people that very angered me. Thank you. When Bruce Springsteen, I didn't name names there. I shouldn't name names now, but when it made me so angry that he would eliminate or not allow and to exclude. And if anything in Christianity, it's welcoming everyone. There's no exclusion. It's not like, well, green-eyed people aren't allowed. It's so to exclude those people from his Broadway play, a Broadway show, it seemed to me, and then it seemed angry, and it made me angry, and then I had to dig underneath what's that anger, and then I have to know, well, why is he angry, and why am I allowing myself to get angry, and where is the forgiveness there, and you have to know that what it is I can't interpret what other people are feeling, and a lot of what people were feeling was fear, and they're also feeling like they had to get along, and that's pretty common. And so if I am going to lead my life and be an example as Christ compels us to do, then I have to do it, even if it hurts, even if it stretches how I used to feel, and forgiveness. And once you forgive, the beautiful thing about forgiveness isn't the person, it's you. You end up feeling better.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with that other person you're mad at, right? You're releasing yourself from that anger and that frustration and that, resentment. What you mentioned kind of coming back to God, what was your faith journey? What has it been traditionally, and what was it that brought you back around?
Well, I remember being so devoted into Christianity literally as a 16-year-old boy, that I would have dreams of Jesus Christ. And then I did stray like many Christians do stray. And I think, there was a continuing pull back, knowing where I needed to be and to be home. And then very, very strange confluence of things. I married a Catholic, and she was very patient with me, and she's been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And Catholicism and Christianity is in Europe has declined, but in South America it is still very strong. And my wife's from Mexico, and there is a real strong faith in Christianity that has not diminished. And I think it's because life is hard there, and I think that they need to. There is a necessity to for hope and for strength, and with that strength, whether you have less, if you know that you have a foundation in God, and I think you'll be happier. And I think if you take a look at totalitarian countries, and friends of mine, Ilya Baskin, who was from the former Soviet Union, was godless. It was hopeless. There was hopelessness there, and this atheistic thing, which is basically pervaded the world, is atheism, and this idea that things just blew up, and and there's just and the universe is things bumping into things and expanding, and that we as human beings are just this freak of accident that happened, that this empathy and compassion and love that we feel is just this accident that happened, and there's no reason for it, and nothing will come of it. And eventually the universe will just be a series of black holes. And I would just go, well, wait a minute. There's no science behind that. And that is a bleak, horrible way to go through life. I mean, if there is such a thing as love, as compassion, as empathy, it's because you found it in other people. And if it exists in our universe, and as my good friend Norm Macdonald said, my dear friend Norm Macdonald, he said, it is, we're not a big part of the universe, we're just a fraction of it. So how much more so the rest of the universe? And if it exists, it is endemic to a universe. And then there is something behind all this thing, and that is love, and love is God, and that's the creation of everything. When you take a look at, the flowers and spermatozoas, there's way too much of it that seems to be necessary for those flowers to continue. It seems to be there's not a necessity for all the stars in the skies. There seems to be a celebration of existence. And I think what we are is God's, desire for us to experience and find out that we're part of the whole thing. And it's to get to, if you're looking at it from a purely Zen or Buddhist perspective, it's to evolve from a place to where the universe wanted to experience itself, and in a higher state of consciousness. I mean, the rocks have consciousness, very low consciousness. We have very high consciousness. And then I think for what, for me, the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, we worked on this script, and it's been 5 years now, about the Shroud of Turin. And the last draft that I wrote, which is based on a true story, I didn't write. I was just, when anybody who works in the creative arts, there's an antenna. You don't know how it's coming or what it's coming. But I found myself for 9 days just writing this last draft, and it's beautiful. And then when you dig into the Shroud of Turin, which is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, you realize that it could not have possibly been, as they say, a medieval forgery. And so, well, then what is this? And they said, well, the people who were doing the calculations for the testing of this, the carbon dating, they did not put into their calculations the French nuns and the devotion of the French nuns, who in the 16th century repaired. Can you imagine the nuns, how, and their devotion, knowing that this was the death cloth that their Savior, that their Lord was wrapped in, how delicately they would work for each strand. And the French nuns did this thing called an invisible weave. And so that when they did the cutting, that threw off the carbon dating. And that's why when they did it, they tested it in several areas. The further that they went into the cloth, the further back in time they went, to 14th, 13th, and 12th century. If they would have kept going, not part of that cloth, they would have gone to 2,000 years. The only reason that cloth exists is because it's Egyptian linen.
It's incredibly fascinating. The Shroud has captivated people. So you've worked on a script about this.
The Shroud of Turin. Yeah, we want to make this movie, and I will tell you, it's been very difficult to make the movie. And there are, there's a reason why the Shroud of Turin in Turin, Italy, is surrounded by the highest concentration of devil worshippers in the world. They've tried to destroy it several times. What the Shroud of Turin ultimately is the receipt. That's why it's such an important thing. It's the receipt of the price that was paid by Jesus Christ. Forgiveness for all of humanity. I mean, I couldn't work on this and couldn't see this without being so moved by it. And I really want to, this movie's getting closer to being made now. And I want to play the Benedictine monk and this woman, this divorced woman of 2 kids. And together they did prove to the scientists that this is that he did admit that this is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. And I mean, that I couldn't, at that point, I could no longer just continue to live my life thinking, well, this doesn't affect me. It's like, how could it not? It's proof.
So this project also sort of infused your faith then and catapulted it forward.
Well, it became, and then as Jesus does, it's just a little nudge, a little nudge, a little nudge. When they use the word inspire, it comes from the Greek. It doesn't mean like inspiration, inspiratu in Latin, and it goes back to the Greek. It doesn't, its real definition is God's breath. God doesn't whisper, say, okay, you got to go to church now. Okay, Jesus Christ is real. This actually happened. This is not a myth. You need to have a foundation. You know, God doesn't work that way. Inspire comes from God's breath. God's breath. It's not even a whisper. It's not a word. It's a breath. They go. It's like, what was that? Did I feel that? And that's God's love for you. And God could put his hand down and make everybody, but God wants us to come to him of our own volition. That is the greatest, that is the great gift. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I just, again, things started happening one after another. And then the lockdown happened. And then I saw organized evil and people coerced into doing things, and then closing churches while they kept open strip clubs and marijuana places and liquor stores. At a certain point, you realize that there is a darkness that every 100 years or so befalls the earth and human beings, and you better be prepared for it. But be diligent, but don't be fearful. And that is very important, to not be fearful, because you don't make good decisions. Obviously, with what happened during COVID, the decisions that were made were done from a place of fear, not science, not logic, and not what was best for children. So, but I am buoyant about it, because I know that this battle's been already won. It's just, we're going to have to go.
Yeah.
Like that Father Ripperger said, Jesus already won. This is just a mop-up mission.
Yeah, well, that's a nice part of a prophecy too. You kind of know how the story ends, but you got to get there, right? So
you got to get there, and you got to suffer through it, slog through it. But that's what's supposed to happen. We're not supposed to. It's supposed to be easy. You're not supposed to just,
How did
supposed to be a challenge.
I got to ask you, because being so vocal, you've had an incredible career. You've done everything. You're hilarious. You've made movies. You've done TV. I mean, you've done it all.
Thank you.
No, it's true. I mean, but how hard has it been? And maybe it hasn't been. How impacted have you been by being so vocal on faith, on policies, those sorts of things?
Well, I think I've been very lucky to have a career. I didn't, my parents didn't come in show business. My dad had a little tiny company where he did loans on second deeds of trust, and he worked out his own business. And he's the only one who graduated high school. His father could barely read, came from Prussia.
Wow.
And my mother was, a World War II, traumatized World War II survivor of the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. So I was raised by, this. And so I don't feel any obligation to any ideology that is really not based in something to improve humanity. So I don't feel like I'm missing out or being excluded. I don't need their approval. I've made a very good living in show business, and I have been touring and doing stand-up comedy for most of the last 10 years. And I don't really get work in Hollywood anymore. But I'm not looking for it, and I don't feel like that's something I need. I mean, I made 50 movies. I mean, what was another 10 more? What's that going to do?
Right. Exactly. You've done it all. That's the thing, right? I mean, it's
that's why I've become a bludgeon for or become a people who try to attack me. Let them. I mean, what can they do? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the faith and Jesus Christ. If he came back, they would try to do the same thing again to him. Why? Because he forces you to look at your own lies, your own falsehoods, and what you are not living up to. I mean, that is and also at the same time, releases you from guilt and releases you from the idea that you have to work this and do all these things to in your life from a place of servitude as opposed to a place of love.
Yeah.
And if you get there, then there's a certain strength to it. But that strength's going to be challenged because what it does is it forces other people to look at themselves. And it isn't a place that there's a reason why Christianity is attacked.
Oh, absolutely. You have to re-examine everything about yourself. And as you're saying, for Christians, once other people see that you have this thing, it convicts them, right? And then you've got this chain reaction of conviction that, it either yields people becoming believers or it yields an anger in people who are offended by that internally. They don't even realize why sometimes.
Well, they don't, but it does come from a place. I mean, what it does is it brings up things, and the stuff that it brings up is important because that's how Christ works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I have to tell you too, you have this fun new project, and, I could talk for 3 hours with you about this stuff.
It's important because I do think, like with the TV series Chip Chilla that we're doing on the Daily Wire, they realize that there is an indoctrination happening in the media that is undermining the last bastion of freedom in the world, truthfully, which is the United States of America. And if they can undermine that, then it can all go. I mean, the only reason we escaped COVID is because the United States, of the Second Amendment, we had guns, and the government knew they can only push us so far. As the United States opened and got free, so did the rest of the world. Yeah. So it's important to maintain that. And what the Daily Wire Entertainment wants to do is entertain people in 48 states that are not California and New York. That is a powerful, powerful thing to do. And I'm very proud to be able to be with them so that people can watch this, the TV series and say, hey, I can relax. I don't have to watch it beforehand to see what, indoctrination is trying to happen from Hollywood. So in that sense, I'm very happy, and it's a pleasure to work with them.
Well, we're looking forward to pushing people there. Rob, we appreciate your time.
And by the way, the Daddy-Daughter Trip is a movie that's coming out it's a really nice little family movie. It's on Amazon downloads and it's at Walmart. And I hope people get a chance to see that. It's available now.